either you go there and you kill them one after the other. It's costly, it's dangerous, and it may even be counterproductive because these people have a mythology of, well, martyrdom. You just dry out their recruitment field and you offer alternatives to the local people.
Former ISIS hostage and French journalist Nicholas Hinnon on the way to fight that organization. Joining us now, national security analyst for the Clarion Project, Ryan Mauro, who Skypes in from New Jersey, and still with us, my old congressional colleague, former Representative Bob Walker, Skyping in from a snowy Washington this morning. Ryan, in the headlines today, a Virginia teen now accused of being a recruiter for ISIS. What needs to happen to do what Mr. Hinnon talked about, stemming those ISIS recruitment efforts?
Well, obviously you have to expand the ability of the federal authorities to monitor Facebook. That doesn't mean hacking into people's Facebooks randomly, but I've heard this many, many times from different counterterrorism officials that they can't just go scrolling through Facebook, looking through all the public profiles, looking for ISIS sympathizers or other radicals. They rely upon Americans, your average student at a high school. And so there also needs to be education because the American people, I'm really amazed at how often they just assume that anything posted publicly the FBI is aware of. And that's not how it works. The first line of defense are civilians who are aware, who are looking for this stuff, and then when they pop up in your Facebook newsfeed, you have to report it to the police. That basic step is not happening in most of these cases that we hear about.
What does this particular arrest tell us about how deep this recruitment activity is going into the whole of American society?
Well, I don't know that it indicates that ISIS has a great level of strength within the Muslim American community. All indications are that it's very, very minuscule. But what this does do is that it continues a pattern that we're seeing, which is that someone gets radicalized probably online, and then this is a social activity. One of the greatest ingredients to the radicalization process is that you idolize someone who's a little bit older than you, or maybe someone who you think is cooler than you around the same age, and then you follow in their footsteps. So terrorism, interestingly enough, is very similar to a gang mentality where you feel alienated from the society around you. In the case of females that are radicalized, a lot of them are lonely. They don't have good dating lives, and then a man comes into their life who happens to be an ISIS supporter and radicalizes them and gives them the affection and sense of belonging that they desire.
Matt, let's return to something that may need some amplification. We've heard for years, if you see something, say something. But you're telling us now this needs to apply to the entire realm of social media, virtually for every American. We need to be vigilant?
Sure. I mean, think about it. If you go onto Facebook and you see one of your friends talking about stabbing someone, everyone's going to understand, I should call the police. But that level of education does not exist now when it comes to ISIS and terrorism. So I don't think that this would be a big jump. It's just that people don't know what to look for. So when the Department of Homeland Security says, if you see something, say something, first of all, they don't know what to look for. Secondly, they don't know who to say something to. There is a huge lack of education, and I've been involved personally in incidents where I've met someone who has for a long time been aware of radical content by someone on Facebook. And I say, why didn't you report it? And it almost always comes back to this idea, well, it's public. I'm sure the FBI knows about it, so I don't have to do anything. Or they don't want to put themselves out there. Or in a surprisingly large number of cases, they actually feel bad. They say, I don't believe that this individual is going to do anything, and I'm worried about ruining their lives if I tell the police.
Are we able to follow whether or not people in this country are in fact tied into the networks of social media that are being used by ISIS and other terrorist organizations?
The capability definitely does exist because they'll have Facebook groups that are openly radical that you can join and then see who they're friends with. You can do link analysis where if there's an ISIS supporter and then you look on his friend list and he's talking, or on his wall he's chatting with 10 different people in Libya and Syria and Yemen. There's all sorts of things that you can do there with advanced software. So the capabilities exist. Really, it's just a matter of getting it done, of having counterterrorism personnel feeling comfortable doing that. It's a matter of bureaucracy. But if you really want to stop the recruiting, you have to stop the appeal. And the way you do that is by defeating them on the ground. Because the number one way that ISIS is able to advertise themselves is through their success. Because that is interpreted as meaning that Allah is blessing you. So someone before that might say, I think ISIS is crazy. I think their interpretation of Islam is just not based in reality. But then they see them advancing on the ground, them withstanding a U.S. bombing campaign, and it can give the impression that the only reason they're able to withstand this and take more territory is because Allah is endorsing them.
And with less than 2 minutes left, gentlemen, let's turn to some ground objectives. Reports from Libya that ISIS has been attacking oil fields there. What are you hearing about that operation, and how important is this to ISIS?
Oh, ISIS loves this. Particularly for ISIS and the Iranians, they view oil essentially as Allah's gift to them, that is the key that belongs to them that allows them to hold the world hostage. So they see that, even that, as the fulfillment of prophecy. So whether they get to capture it or whether they get to destroy it, they're happy either way. And that's why we need a broad strategy where there are drone strikes in places like Libya, in Afghanistan and Pakistan, wherever ISIS rises up, and you make sure that they don't spread. And when they lose on the ground, brag about it. We are very bad in this area because when ISIS has a small victory, they let everyone know about it. We should be doing the same thing. If they have a setback, then we should be rubbing it in their faces so that all those potential people that are toying with the idea of supporting them say to themselves, well, obviously Allah is not blessing them because they're getting their butts kicked.
The revenue that they get from these oil fields is also important to them, isn't it?
About 30 seconds on this answer, Ryan.
Right, they're very rich, and so obviously you have to deny them access to that. But for me, one of the most dangerous arguments out there is that we need to ally with Iran against this group. It is Iranian influence that broke the relationships in Iraq that enabled ISIS to gain so much power. So if you start working with Iran, the Shiite version of ISIS, you're just going to make the situation worse.
And on that note of warning about an alliance with Iran, we thank you very much, Ryan Mauro. And Bob Walker, as always, you have our thanks as well. We'll continue after this Newsmax Now update.